So hello and welcome to another episode of Rebel City Podcast. This week's episode we have Darren McGarvey, or Loki the Scottish Rapper, depending on how you know him or how you've engaged with his content. Before we get into that, this is our 40th episode and we're a year old, so absolutely amazing. When we started doing this, I don't think I really thought we would get a year in or 40 episodes or quite have the same amount of engagement. Last week I had said about the stats that we're getting through are improving week on week, and I gave a wee shout out to some people. I'm just going to do that again. So Jeanette Finlay, call it out, Chris Bungard, Chris McQueer, Sean McDonald, KP, loads and loads and loads, Elliot Reeves, loads of people. Just want to say thank you, Alex Tiffin, Mike Stuckbury. Thank you for the retweets, coming on the show, everything that you do. So this week's guest, as I said, Darren McGarvey. Darren's doing the podcast tour of Glasgow. I think he's on so many podcasts coming up, so I thought I'd get this one out pretty rapid, get ahead of the trend. We spoke about his show that's coming up in the Fringe, Scotland today, and I'll post some links to tickets with the podcast. Had an incredible conversation. We started out on the show and it just kind of went from there. I had a whole list of stuff that talking points, and I never really touched it because Darren's such an engaged, educated person, and the subjects that he goes out and talks about in the world that, I mean, we just took it away. We spoke about sort of politics, what it's like to have money now that he's got a wee bit of cash behind him off the back of Poverty Safari. We spoke about social mobility, dealing with how your life's changing, whole load of stuff, and really, really good episode. We've got Mary Black coming up pretty shortly after this one as well, so we're putting out some good episodes in the next few weeks. Just want to say thank you to anybody who has clicked, listened, liked, shared, anything at all to do with the podcast. I really appreciate it. I love doing it. It's my creative outlet. And it just seems to be the last few weeks that everything's really sort of taken off, and I can't be more grateful to people for that. So thank you, anybody that's been on or follows or likes, anything like that. And on that, I'll just go to the episode. Cheers, guys. So hello and welcome to another episode of Rebel City Podcast. As always, we'll get Matt. How's it going, Matt?
No bad, mate. Just loving life at the minute. We're absolutely rammed with guests, and we've got another great one today.
I know, man. Very privileged to have Darren McGarvey. How's it going, Darren?
Very well, thank you. It's nice to be here. Thanks for turning this around at such short notice.
Quite good at that, actually, man. This is the advantages of having doing it in your own place. Don't need to book studios and all that type of shit to get people in, man. But we're here to talk about, mainly we're here to talk about the show that's going on at the Fringe this year, Scotland Today. So what's the theme of the show?
Well, I've been obviously I'm kind of known for writing about issues around poverty and things like that. But the last year for me has been a bit of a kind of head fuck, because I'm not poor, and I don't, and not necessarily that I was totally dirt poor before the book came out, but my whole circumstances have completely changed. So I thought that this would be a good way for me to kind of still stick to familiar themes that people might be interested or used to me talking about, but also get a chance to talk about different stuff. Because, I've always spoken about or written about social mobility for the point of feeling socially immobile. Or excluded in some way, and just like the amount of opportunities, the amount of mobility that I've enjoyed in the last year has not only been quite dizzying, but also a whole new stream of insights that you get into not just the economy or politics, but how this ravine opens up between the winners and losers in society. Because some of the things that you realise when your lifestyle changes, It challenges a lot of your assumptions, which obviously were previously based on just experience and being on the other side of the train tracks.
Yeah.
And so really I just kind of wanted to write a show that explores some of that stuff, because I think my claims to being working class are getting more tenuous by the day, even though I still feel connected to that community and I still want to speak, not on behalf of that community, but just try to kind of express the issues across the divide. So it's kind of led to a lot of interesting observations and conflicts within me, and I just thought I'll do a show about that.
This is something that one of our previous guests kind of vaguely touched on. Chris McQueer, the author of like, Hings and Here We Fucking
He's a
Go,
good guy, man. Shout out to
He
him.
was an absolute lovely boy. But he was saying himself that he had that like fear about success taking him away from what made him successful. You know what I mean? Like, so it's obviously not just yourself. You know what I mean? Like, what is? I mean, I quite like the fact that we've got people like yourself out there who have that kind of working class background. That even though, like the other day, we had Mary Black in, and again she's
Shout out to Mary Black.
Yep.
She's cool as fuck.
She was. She's a really working class person who's went into this kind of austere environment and still managed to stay who she is. So I mean, I think it's possible. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that the change needs to be something that is intrinsically about losing yourself in this new world. It's just an extra string to your bow.
And she would have experienced a lot of things that I've been privileged enough not to have to go through. So because she's a politician, then there's a different level of scrutiny on her and a different sense of accountability.
Yeah.
And different standards. Whereas if somebody pulls me up for the way that I talk or something that I say, I can always just say, well, I'm not a fucking politician. Fuck off.
Aye, of course.
I know Mary can do that as well, but
Yeah.
then obviously because of aspects of gender and sexuality as well, I think that a lot of the stick that she's received has been motivated more by resentments around those things. And then also there was a big kind of campaign for a while that was trying to sort of out her as some kind of like middle class person incognito,
Yeah.
which for a working class person is the ultimate insult.
Yeah.
Call me whatever you want, do you know what I mean? But if you call me middle class, I'm going to chase your motor to the lights, I'm going to roll your window down, do you know what I mean, and give you what for. So, I think, and it's the same experience with Chris as well, I think, like, those anxieties before the book comes out, I can still remember what they were like. The anxiety is, can I write a book? I mean, your whole thing is just consumed with, am I the sort of person that can write a book? It's all these other kind of posh sounding people that do this kind of thing. And then actually the whole mindset is so consumed with just trying to write a book. And for me, obviously, having a young family, young kids, I was working multiple jobs. And then the next thing you know, the book's out and it just feels like everybody's talking about it. And suddenly you're like, oh, I never thought about this part.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about getting the book done. I wasn't actually thinking that it was going to do anything other than be proof that I could write a book.
Yeah.
And then, when the Orwell Prize happened, that's really when everything went into overdrive. Because the Orwell Prize happened 2 weeks before I was due to do the Fringe.
Okay.
And then the day that I started the Fringe, Pan Macmillan, one of the big London publishers, republished Poverty Safari. So it was this kind of perfect storm of circumstances that just put me into every conversation that was going on culturally, and certainly in Scotland anyway, in a way that set everything up really nicely. So funnily enough, one of the things I'll kind of riff on in the show is, that was my initial problem, not being able to afford to write a book, the stress of can you write a book, the low self-esteem. My problem this year is I'm competing with my own success last year.
Yeah.
So I've got to write another book, and I've got to write another Fringe show that's got to be as good or better.
Right.
And even though that's an embarrassing, indulgent
Yeah.
problem to have,
Yeah.
it's a real problem for me.
Aye, of course,
Absolutely.
man.
But you
that's
can't. But you can't. The thing is, these problems become harder to share because I still am surrounded by people who are still living in that
Yeah.
life that I come from.
Yeah.
It's almost like the third album. Like, this is what it's. This is your Be Here Now. Like,
Aye. Third album syndrome, aye.
I think that. I mean, the fact that you're just acknowledging it, I think that's a good thing. Like, I think the majority of people would just get lost up their own arse and just go into this. Probably feel the same sort of tensions that you're feeling, but will just go into this sort of like, no, I'm this person that people think I am, and I'll just express it like that, rather than what you're doing is self-reflecting and actually like going out there and talking about it, because I think that's going to be really powerful for people. I think one of the things that jumped out, I was reading through the sort of Twitter feed just in the prep, was that you were talking about the sort of that perfect storm, that you were really lucky that things happened for you. And it really like brought up quite a lot of stuff for me about because I was in a band previously and I struggled because I didn't make it. And then when I speak to other people, they'll say to me like, what do you mean you didn't make it? Like, you went on tour and you did all these things and you met all these amazing people, and
I watched you play at music festivals.
and I think
London.
back and go, fuck, maybe I should have just enjoyed it a wee bit more. And is the aim just to actually just do the work rather than just aiming to be successful? And you'll get people that will sit in their bedroom, like you were saying, I just wanted to write a book, but you'll get people that will literally sit and go, no, I want to be a best-selling author, and that is my goal before I've even like wrote a page.
I think, you know, that, I mean, if you go on YouTube or Instagram, you're going to find those videos that people will Google search, you know, how to be successful about a certain type of thing, you know, and somebody breaking down the secrets and the secret ingredients and all that. Some of the things that people don't tell you, maybe either because they've not really thought about it that much, or because, as you sort of are saying there, they assume that the circumstances in which they suddenly find themselves were all because of their own hard work and their own
merit-based.
talent. Aye, and that does play a role. You know, I'm not saying that merit's not important, but, you know, there are so many other circumstances and variables that were out with my control, that were beyond the scope of my talent and ability, that came together, that created the circumstances that I'm now in. Now, maybe I deserved a bit of luck. You know, like I had a bit of a rough time in my earlier life, but and obviously, you know, if I'm choosing to write at night and somebody in my competitive field is choosing to go to the pub, then maybe I deserve an opportunity more than them. And if they're sitting steaming, wondering why they've no got somewhere, maybe they need to think about that. But at the same time, you know, even when you just think about how, like, we're even alive, the chances of being alive, the chances of being born in the country you're born in, the family you're born in, the chances of the universe existing at all. Do you know what I mean?
Even something as simple as like the manuscript landing on the right desk at the right time.
Just,
you know what I mean? Like,
for the Big Bang to the present second, there's just so much random stuff going on that to truly believe that your individual talent and competence is the biggest factor in your life or your circumstances is quite delusional, I would say. And you know, a lot of people pull me up saying, you know, don't need to be too humble. And I'm not trying to be falsely humble. I don't actually, you know, I'm not always a humble person, so that's not the right accusation for me. It's not about being humble, it's about reality. And the reality is that as well as my work and as well as what I've done, there are so many other things, random acts of kindness, people going out their way when they really didn't have to, people looking after my children, you know, women performing so many unpaid fucking roles in life to allow me the space just to think about writing, never mind write.
Aye.
So, you know, when you're constantly getting referred to as a success in a vacuum, as if you've just self-generated, then, you know, I feel it's important for me to constantly remind myself of the truth. Because I think that keeps the feet on the ground, it keeps you kind of hungry, but also it means that you're not becoming somebody who kind of permeates this falsehood about meritocracy. Because, you know, if you look at somebody like Boris Johnson or you look at somebody like Michael Gove, then surely you have to say that while they might believe they deserve to be within spitting distance of number 10 Downing Street, surely the circumstances that they were born into are perhaps the biggest factor that have allowed them to ascend almost to the kind of apex of society, especially with Boris Johnson. I mean, he's not an academically remarkable man.
No.
He doesn't strike me as having great values or being, you know, he's very cunning. Yeah, he's all about self-advancement. There is a certain sophistication and intelligence required for that. But surely
he plays his character well.
Well, surely his parents who took out a mortgage to put him through school, if the aim was to create somebody with integrity and competence, then it was a bad investment. But obviously, posh school isn't necessarily just about that.
No. This is
access to opportunities.
Absolutely no meritocracy when it comes to guys like Johnson and Gove. I mean, so excuse me. I think I read in recent days somebody had tweeted out in the build up to, you know, what feels like Johnson's sort of coronation at this point was. I know it's just a procession, isn't it? But a list of Boris's top 100 achievements as London mayor, and it was like promoted London Fashion Week by standing on a catwalk and taking a picture, and you're like, how is that what we're classifying as
Boris
like a legit
completes coherent sentence.
It was literally as sort of bad as that, you know what I mean? Like, so the notion of meritocracy at those levels is laughable.
Yeah, and the whole idea, the more I researched into it, the more I realised actually the term meritocracy was actually coined satirically. So it was a writer in the 50s who wrote a book called The Rise of the Meritocracy, which was one of a few dystopian novels that were coming out around that period, that were kind of trying to foresee the trends of that time to now. And obviously each of them were right about some things and each of them were wrong about some things. This particular book was wrong about the sort of society that might develop, but obviously it was spot on about if you were to take the idea of meritocracy to its logical conclusion, and you were to actually stratify society based purely on talent and purely on competence, you would still have an underclass.
Yeah.
You would still have people who wouldn't be entitled to do certain jobs because they're already being written off as stupid.
Yeah.
Because merit is always defined to the advantage of the people who benefit from the way the system is.
Yeah.
You know, your idea of merit and Boris Johnson's idea of merit is two different things.
Yeah.
So to be worthy in the eyes of mainstream society, you have to show certain qualities and you have to show competence in certain areas. And if you don't fall within that kind of narrowly defined catchment, then, you know, you're part of a counterculture or you're a radical or whatever, even if you're just as competent, even if you're just as talented. And so, you know, while it can be comforting or it can be kind of tempting to go, wow, look at this, look at what I have done. I personally try to avoid that. And not just that, I mean, I don't want somebody that's helped me or somebody that's supported me watching me talk like that.
Yeah.
Not that they would ever help me to be acknowledged, but it's to be completely ignorant to the amount of effort and time that other people put into helping you. And I've helped a lot of people as well, so I know how it goes.
Like in that area of like success, there's a lot of romance, like especially like, and I'm sure that you'll maybe agree but maybe know that, especially in things like the arts. So like when I was trying to be, or when I decided I want to be in a band, I can remember having a conversation with somebody that I told them that I'd spent say like 5 weeks writing a song, and they were like, well, it must be shite, because the truly great songs just happen. They come out of thin air, like somebody sits down.
Like Razor-like songs. Around this in 2 seconds. You can tell.
But like
the
stuff
mythic
like
great songs.
The mythic, like people like Noel Gallagher. He's got a great story where fucking Johnny Marr gave Marlene a guitar and he opened it up and he took it out and he wrote "Live Forever," and it just flowed out me. But that's a myth, because that guy grafted for years. There was like 5-year graft behind Oasis before they made it. But this myth of like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, the greats, Jimi Hendrix, he came out of nowhere. No, he'd been playing in James Brown's band for like, once you get underneath the skin of success, you realise that what lies behind it generally is a fuck ton of hard work and a dust of luck.
You don't walk into a gym and do a 400-pound deadlift, you know what I mean? You might walk into a new gym and do it and somebody goes, oh my god, they done a 400-pound deadlift, didn't realise all the times they couldn't even do it right, and all the times they put their back out, you know, like there's a whole story that happens prior to that. I think sometimes when you have a kind of a sort of an overnight success, almost, or it's perceived that way, or it's framed that way by media, that certainly happened with me, then actually what I was realising was, to these people in London, it's like I've just been created in a test tube. It's like I've just appeared on the scene, which actually then I realised this works to my advantage, because they don't see you coming. They don't realise all of the experience that you've got as a performer, as a writer, doing media, all these things. So suddenly the thing that bowls everybody over is how competent you seem when you talk, and how how well you write, because in their mind it's like you just exist in that moment.
Because you were thrown to the UK level and the exposure that comes along with that, and I think obviously the book in Question Time were probably the biggest at that time, but you'd been grafting on the scene around Glasgow for years. I mean,
absolutely.
I think we've both bumped into gigs previously when it was, pubs and clubs around the town and stuff like that. I was a vague acquaintance of your wife for a small period of time. I think you were as well. So, I mean, it wasn't like, you just rocked up one day and, there was a massive amount of work that went into getting to that tipping point.
Aye, and I think, see, for anybody out there who's kind of on their own journey with it and wrestling with, should I be putting all this effort into something that might not work out? I've actually found that it's the it's if you're grafting away and you don't realise that what you're doing is work, that's a real privilege.
Aye.
Because actually what I've noticed is now that, 60-70% of the work that I've put in, it just comes natural to me. It's a bit different now because I've professionalised it.
Yeah.
So now there's different kind of pressures, there's deadlines. You've got to, I was always independent, right? When a big publisher gives you a big advance, they're paying for the right to say, here's when the book's coming out, here's what we think about what you're writing, you might want to change that.
Yeah.
And there's a whole adjustment that happens. But still, half the time I'm writing, I'm enjoying the process of doing it.
Yeah.
It's some of the extra stuff or the stress or not getting enough sleep and all that makes it difficult. But that's stuff everybody's dealing with, whatever their job is, whatever they're going through. So it's important as well sometimes. And I would have said this even when I was living in supported accommodation along in Maryhill 15 years ago. As difficult as things can be, if you can locate something to be grateful about, then actually this can help you generate the kind of wellness that you need to transcend a difficulty, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's a professional thing, a relationship thing. There are always wee opportunities to think there's people out there that score it worse than me, and I don't mean that in a cliche way. I mean that's definitely for me, it's been a life-saving technique at times.
You're big on gratefulness, aren't you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I take it too far, but I mean, I write out lists and all sorts of fucking...
No, that's good, mate.
But I just really want to... Because I woke up in my 30s and was just like, my life's shite, and then I've slowly realised over the last 5 years that actually I've got a great fucking life and that I've got great mates, and these are the things that people want. It's no the success or the adoration of people that they don't know. It's the respect to the people that they love. And I think, like, when you were talking about you don't just walk into a gym and do a big massive deadlift or that is the type of thing, unfortunately, that I feel that people are aspiring to, that they click onto their Instagram or whatever and go, and guys like, in 90 days you could look like me, and you're like, mate, you've been going to the gym for 20 years. Like, there is no way that you can get something. But this is like this sort of quick
take a year
fix.
Just to get the diet under control.
Aye, this is like the quick fix that people think, and I think that it's almost applying to mental health as well, where people are like, how do I fix myself? The day. And you're like, you can't. It's going to take a long time for you to get there, do you know what I mean?
People are after destinations, no journeys.
Exactly. Well, these things... I think sometimes people, they become unhappy when they're defining what they have in contrast to what they think somebody else has materially.
Yep.
It was for me. It was a pure pleasure to meet Russell Brand last year because I had been following Russell Brand, but I had been studying him, not as a sort of personality or a political voice or anything like that. First of all, the thing I liked about him was how he spoke, because, like, for me, words are like music, right? So if somebody arranges words in a certain way and speaks with a certain conviction, then regardless of what they're talking about or regardless of how they speak, there's a harmony that's immediately kind of alluring for me.
He does have quite a lyrical tone to his voice, doesn't he?
So I was tuned in, and straight away there was a couple of things that he was saying, a couple of things I noticed. See, when he was telling people not to vote, and there was a big backlash, and his son started going after him, and he was under a lot of pressure as a celebrity, going through a divorce and all these things.
Yep.
I was watching it, and I remember, like, I was in recovery at that time, a couple of years in, right? So I was doing really well, and I immediately identified that in my mind he didn't seem well.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was struggling. He was very defensive. It was like he was caught in this place where he was wanting to thrust himself into the spotlight, but couldn't cope with the pressure of the spotlight.
Yeah.
And and I followed him. Then I heard him in an interview describing fame as being like ash in his mouth.
All right.
I don't know if that's a song lyric that he's kind of recanting, or if that's his observation.
Yeah.
But there's something about that stuck with me, that put me in kind of a forward-thinking mode, which was, if my life continues to flow towards the outcomes that I'm working towards, I'm going to have to bear all these things in mind.
Definitely.
And so people will get depressed because they think that having money is going to make them happier, or that they think that being acknowledged publicly or being publicly noted is going to make them happier.
Yeah.
No, don't get me wrong. Those things can create fleeting moments of satisfaction, right? But actually what you realise, and I've realised, and this is in the show as well, talking about money, and suddenly earning money until the point where the money, like when you're poor, loses its value. It's just this thing that comes and goes. And actually, through being overly generous, maybe for a desire to be liked, maybe out of a guilty conscience, or maybe just because sometimes I'm generous, right? And I know what it's like to not have anything, so I want to help somebody.
Yeah.
Then I end up this year putting myself into a kind of figure 4 leg lock financially, which is ridiculous because I earned more this year than every previous year put together. And so suddenly I'm like, oh, hang on. This is financial insecurity that I'm experiencing, which is just as acute and constant as it was before. But again, it's not the kind of thing you can share publicly because people are going to be like, oh, Mr. fucking sold 80,000 books. Well, it's a shame for you.
Aye.
And what really it showed me is that I'm using money as a conduit to happiness. You know, being overly generous with it. Maybe making purchases to get the house done up and get married and all that a bit too quickly, or being a bit too extravagant with it. And suddenly learning quite a hard lesson about, hang on, I've took on a lot of financial obligations thinking this money's going to keep coming in. And actually now I'm under stress because if I don't generate the next book or the next show, then it's not just me. It's not just my lifestyle.
So it just kind of normalises this, you know, the fantasy that people have in their head about, you know, the quote-unquote celebrity life as a, you know, an author or a playwright or a rapper or whatever it is that you're in about at the time. But, like, what you're talking about is having a job and, like, worrying about the bills exactly the same as everybody else. Like, I think it's interesting that you obviously mentioned Russell Brand, because I think that's, you know, from my understanding or limited understanding of Betty's, it's quite a useful comparison. Obviously, you talk a lot on social issues from a working class perspective, and I know obviously Russell Brand as well had at times went out and tried to help with like London rent issues and like homelessness and stuff like that.
He's always been a campaigner on some level, I think, or an activist.
And quite successful in a lot of respects as well. But I think a lot of the criticism he gets at the time is sometimes what I see, like you say, levelled at you, where you want to talk about a social issue or, you know, politics or whatever it is, and people come back to you like with that, well, hold on, how is
champagne socialist type
that kind of thing.
Smear.
And you're like, what difference does it make if somebody's actually going, no, this isn't cool, here's why it's not cool, here's why we should be kicking back against it. And then it's like, well, what's it got to do with you? And you're like, well, it's got to do with me because I'm here and I've got a platform, you know what I mean? Like, and I think when you talk about Russell, that's, you know, I probably quite an apt comparison, you know what I mean? Like, you face a lot of the same criticisms for, you know, trying to approach life in similar ways.
He's a great example as well, anybody that's in recovery from any sort of malady of any sort, you know, because you've even seen the change in him again in the last few years. So when I watch him, I mean, I've not experienced anything like the kind of public attention that he's experienced. Probably never will, but I'm not aiming for that, thankfully. But the thing that I've noticed about him is that he's still very much relevant. He still has a career. He still lives a good lifestyle, but he seems a lot calmer. He's withdrawn in a certain way. He's got it on his own terms because he's realised actually chasing that success and chasing that money and chasing that fame is making him sick. And you can actually feel satisfied with what it is you've got. And I think one of the other things I go into in the show is this idea of the centre ground. This kind of... This idea, you know, we define every political demographic in a sort of caricature, I believe, you know, the loony lefty. You know, most of the lefties I know are grassroots activists that are getting people signed up to tenants' unions. Do you know what I mean? That are getting people clued up about their rights and their jobs. You know, you do get some people who it's all just about, you know, mere superficial things, or it's ideological and academic and no accessible. But at the same time, you know, the vast majority of people I know on the left work hard, they're dead humble, they're dead committed. But then the same can be said of a lot of people that I've met who occupy this centrist position in politics. And that's become another sort of label we apply. One of the things that I've learned through becoming socially mobile is that while it might appear to other people that I have enough, and I certainly do have enough, financial insecurity is built into the economic DNA of this country. It's what drives every purchase. It's what drives every loan. It's what drives every single decision to move from one job to the next. And so even people who have enough, because they don't feel like they have enough, because society is always bombarding us with messages about acquiring more stuff, then the financial insecurity is just as acute. And so this shapes political behaviour. Because on the radical left, you've got people saying it's clear yous have got enough, so maybe you want to spread the wealth out a wee bit more. But the people who have more or have enough don't feel like they have enough. So they're like, we can have a wee bit of radicalism, but not too much, because actually getting hit for 41% tax is a wee bit sorer than some of you lefties out there might realise. And I find myself wrestling with these things now. You know, your tax bill comes in and you're like, how much? I earned how much? I didn't know how much I'd earned.
That's it.
Of course, you want to make your contribution, but
so this is why middle class people keep receipts for everything.
I've seen my tax receipts at the end, and I make enough money as well. And I've seen my tax thing come through at the end of the tax year and think, where the fuck did that go, man? I've pissed that up against the wall. But I think that too much things make you just as unhappy as having too little. There definitely needs to be like a certain sort of basic platform of like food, shelter, healthcare, education that needs to get taken care of, and then the rest of it's all just superficial as fuck. Like people sitting, I can't remember where I heard this, but somebody said, as you tweet your outrage of the upper class on your iPhone that was built by a 10-year-old in China, like you need to look at your own hypocrisies and realise that you're contributing to this system that is ultimately out of control to a sort of certain extent. I quite like that. Something that perplexes me particularly is this idea that being liberal or being centre is almost like, I would rather be hard left or hard right. If you're in the middle, what are you?
How dare you understand nuance?
It can certainly is. I mean, I was getting pulled up the other day off of somebody, as I often do on social media. Somebody's like, in chapter 24 of your book, you say that you used to think all Tories were scum, and now you don't think that. Can you explain? You know what I mean?
Explain why.
And I was like, and then I gave them an answer, but that answer wasn't sufficient.
Of course.
And then I tried to elaborate a wee bit further. And then I realised what I was dealing with was somebody who, despite obviously having a real good academic grasp of politics and the economy from a leftist perspective, they also had this rather juvenile assumption that every single person who has ever voted for the Conservative Party must hate poor people or must be dangerous to poor people. And hasn't really been able to, or refuses to separate conservative values, conservative impulses, conservative instincts from the Conservative Tory Party in its current form. And I feel, having been at food bank AGMs where there's Conservative people in the audience, where there's Tories volunteering, where there's Tory councillors there engaged on the issues, I can't then go back to my echo chamber and act like I haven't experienced Conservatives in real life and found that they aren't all cunts. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's and being able to understand, I think, the moral worlds that drive certain types of politics. And I'm not saying there's an equivalent between every moral worldview. There's not an equivalent between Islamic extremism and centrism, just because both people feel moral about what it is they're doing. You can objectively say this is a lot of shite over here. But at the same time, people have a commitment to their moral worldview that needs to be observed and understood in order to understand the wider population, the diversity of views at play, not necessarily to apologise for them or to play to them, but so that you understand with almost military precision the society that you're moving in, who believes what, why they believe that, how they got to that. Because whether you want to persuade them or whether you want to take them out in a debate, the more you understand about how they think, the better, I believe.
Definitely. I mean, we spoke about this with Mary Black, where I was saying that I've encountered, I grew up in a scheme and I was a working class guy, and I've ascended to the middle class, and I speak to people and I've spoke to people.
I'm still for Springburn, so fuck a pair of you class
You're still a middle.
I live in Calderwood, man.
This is the thing. Like,
I live in the corner for 2 bookies.
If you
I am the same as him, I just live in Springburn.
Statistically, you're in the middle class as well. And the idea that to expect somebody that's went to private school, so I think the example we were talking about was Rees Mogg. That guy had a nanny until he was 22. To expect that guy to understand what it's like to grow up in a Glasgow housing scheme in the 90s, the 80s and 90s is fucking ridiculous. Just as ridiculous as it is for you to understand how it is to be upper class. Like, I grew up and it was almost hated money. It was like, pure money's the I don't know what my mom used to say, but like money's is all the evils in the
root
world,
of all evil.
The root of all evil. And then I'm sitting in a boardroom because I work at a huge £1 billion company, and I'm sitting in the boardroom with a guy that went to private school and sat in the board of directors of Arsenal and talking to him and going, oh wait, you're just a human being and you've got the same insecurities that I've got, and I can see it in the guy's eyes.
Yeah.
And what you said that rings true with me is I've met these people in the real world. There's too many people now that just sit on Twitter and think that is the real world. Like, that is what the right is. What I see in these wee 2-minute videos and these snapshots and articles on the newspaper, and I think like you need to go and experience these things.
I mean, I feel the central truth, self-evident truth of conservatism is it works when people have something to conserve, right? The problem is when it's clumsily applied by public school conservatives to communities where there are so many other things that come before personal responsibility, that come before meritocracy, that come before becoming an entrepreneur or property or going to university. Now, that's just a fact, right? So the question then is, how do you create a circumstance where that sort of public school conservatism isn't being imposed? So you engage democratically, you vote for a party that isn't the Conservative Party, right? But at the same time, you should always be attempting to communicate why you're doing that and express why you're doing that, because there's a lot of people in the centre who often vote for a party because they feel that the alternative that they might otherwise vote for is a bit more dangerous to their interests or dangerous for the country, you know, and that's certainly the case right now.
Yeah, we see a lot of, you know, in the general election, Jeremy Corbyn will get into bed with Nicola Sturgeon and you need to vote for us because you don't want this, as you're saying, but at the same time, the Tories then go and get in bed with the DUP, who are, you know, arguably a lot. I mean, the guys don't even believe in fucking dinosaurs, you know what I mean? So there is that going on every day.
Absolutely, and like what I'm saying there, like I'm no justifying people who are sort of political chameleons, you know, who can come on social media and sound like they're left wing, but actually quite comfortable voting for the Conservative Party if it's to settle a beef with Jeremy Corbyn, right? I'm not saying that that's cool. I don't think that is cool. The question is, be more honest about your values then, if that's what you're willing to trade. But obviously you have to understand the political dynamics that's at play. And, you know, when you're saying you're committed to truth and social justice, but you're also going to make an assumption about more than half the population in the country that you live in, that they're scum, a word that I reserve for a very specific type of person, then I don't think that's reasonable. And more to the point, I don't think that that's intelligent. I don't think that that's an insightful way to behave. And so that's kind of where I'm at sometimes, because I feel lefty. And I identify myself as that, and certainly that has been ascribed to me by people who know me in the community. But there's a certain strain of left-wing person that I find difficult to tolerate, you know, and it's the person who comes armed to the pearly white teeth, full set of teeth, always these cunts, do you know what I mean? With all the academic understanding of things, but you parachute them into a community like Govan Hill, you parachute where people buy the Daily Mail, do you know what I mean? Who the fuck's buying the Daily Mail and housing schemes then if Tories are scum, the working class are supposed to be standing and fighting on behalf of, you know what I mean? I just personally, I just don't think that's cool.
Identity are what people, and we've touched on notions of identity in relation to, you know, the political landscape a number of times. But like, for example, you know, people become so entrenched in, I'm working class, I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever it happens to be, I'm for Indie, I'm for the union, there seems to be any myriad of, you know, options for you to just get in behind and then get in the trench about nowadays. And I found it quite recently where I think it was actually an article that you had posted that I shared, the decriminalisation of drug use in Scotland by the Daily Record. Now, I actually prefaced both a Facebook post and a tweet with, this is a publication I ordinarily would not share, but in this instance, this is something that's bang on the money and needs to happen for our society to evolve. And I got a lot of, well, what you then sharing the Daily Record? And you're like, well, I just said to you that I wouldn't normally, but this is an important issue. Is this because of the
position that the Record took on Indie? That's because that's been a big thing that the Daily Record's paid for, I think, you know, in terms of like the circulation and all that, the vow and things like that. So I understand the reasoning, you know, and I think in general tabloid journalism, particularly the I would say the Mirror, the Record, it's improved over the years. It's become more attuned to evolving social attitudes. But ultimately, a tabloid's job is to reflect what its guess is of its readership's views.
Yeah.
Now, necessarily, that's not always a responsible thing to do. It's a bit of an editorial cop-out sometimes. This is our position on immigration because our readers are kind of xenophobic.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, when the media starts driving public opinion or trying to shape public opinion in a deliberate way, such as some of the other right-wing tabloids where you can see there's a proprietorial influence over the editorial position, then that's also dangerous. So on one hand, you're saying we expect tabloids to lead the way, don't portray issues in a certain way, and then we're saying we can't have tabloids that are trying to lead the issues because they're going to lead it this way that we don't like. So actually, the more I've got into it, the more I've understood it, the maybe more mature, or maybe some of the ethical accommodations that I've made in recognition that an opportunity has been sprung my way, and that the situation that I'm in, I might not be able to afford not to take that opportunity, which is me speaking very frankly, do you know what I mean, in a way that I will on the show.
Yeah.
Then actually when you get to know people working in media and you get to know journalists a wee bit more, you realise actually it's one of the toughest professions out there, because ultimately you're just getting it in the neck all the time off everybody for everything. You're working long hours, constant employment insecurity. You're watching the whole industry falling down around you because of things like this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so, in that sense, I have a wee bit more sympathy and a wee bit more solidarity with journalists. Now, there's some bastards in the profession, like every profession, and there's some liars and scoundrels, and I get that. But ultimately, the position the Daily Record took on decriminalisation of drugs is one that I was very proud of as a Scottish person, as a consumer of Scottish news, and also as an employee of that paper.
All right.
Aye. So the Daily Record really is taking a big gamble there. As big a gamble as The Vow, where really I think, a lot of the times the papers, what they do is they'll do something like they'll check what the odds are at a bookies before a referendum. And if the odds are that the thing's losing, that's public opinion. So they're using all sorts of metrics to gauge what the editorial position should be. Yeah. So the Record saw its responsibility to reflect its readership, which was very narrowly in favour of voting no. And that's just what happened. But obviously every publication's paid some sort of cost for what they done, whether it's the Sunday Herald, which no longer exists, or whether it's the Daily Record and the Scotsman and things like that. But, not to deviate too far. Just kind of, it's an interesting thing to go into.
Aye, when credit where it's due for them, you know what I mean? Like, there was the point I was kind of trying to make at the time, and I found that, that maybe hangover for things like The Vow and all the rest of it drove this just reaction that I was like...
A quick point is, people out there who want to talk about ethics of media, it's more ethically nightmarish to use Facebook for free than it is to buy a Daily Record. In the grander scheme of the world and geopolitics and information, for you to use Facebook for nothing, that's actually a bigger ethical problem than spending 50p on a Daily Record.
How your big data's been abused.
Of course, people don't understand that you're gaining them so much in return for that app on your phone, and that's the case across, I think.
But it's nice to feel like you're doing the right thing, isn't it? It's nice to feel like you're doing the right thing.
that there's quite a lot. We were talking off mic earlier on where we do like wee short versions of the podcast, and I'm working on one where I think politics is becoming like a fucking cult, where people just don't feel like they've got a place in the world. Religion's dying, and the only thing that they've got is this place or these things where they can go and put it online and they get 50, 100, thousands of likes for saying, I think this. And the majority of people on my timeline think that as well, so that means that I'm right. And it's like the echo chamber, like you're saying, during the independence referendum, I would have probably said, we're going to vote 75-25 for this. This is the way I feel. Yep. This is the way my social feels. And then when it came out, I was shocked to my fucking core. So how can that be?
Same here.
And really reflected on it and went, I've done exactly what I didn't want to do here with Twitter and Facebook, and I've ended up just surrounded by like-minded people, and I'm not getting to see the other side. Yeah. And exactly what you were saying earlier on as well, to really, truly be able to speak to people about this, you need to understand all sides of the argument and understand why has somebody got here. So we were talking to Mary Black about this again, that my brother-in-law's a taxi driver, and Uber, he's had to go back to driving the buses, and he left the buses because he hated it and went to drive a taxi. Now Uber's come in and completely wiped out his job, and the majority of people that work at Uber don't come for this country. So he is absolutely like anti-immigration because it's done him out of a job.
Aye.
I understand that. I can see that. I'm not standing there screaming racist at him, which I would have probably done 3 or 4 years ago, just because I can see why this guy feels like that.
When actually, you can understand why he feels
But it's
like
not
that.
about the individual.
It doesn't mean it's right that he feels that way.
Definitely no.
Even in an empirical sense, when you actually look at the way that the society's set up, you can't, like, the reason that he moved from job to job is because he needs money to do X, Y, Z, which is the same reason the migrant comes into the country.
Exactly.
So they're motivated by the same interests.
Yeah.
They have their labour to sell
They've
in a
got more in
marketplace.
common than what they do different.
Aye, exactly. But the way that the debate is currently set up and the things that people are sort of like kind of compelled to think are more important is the skin colour of the person who beat you to a job.
Yep.
When actually what you're talking about is a globalised economy where you're having migration of jobs, and that's followed by migration of workers. And then you've got obviously economic migrants coming in from all sorts of places, violent, impoverished places, and they come here, and often we put them in our most violent and poor communities, and we don't expect there to be a breakdown in social cohesion sometimes. In places like Govan Hill, for example,
Sighthill as well.
Well,
You know what I mean? Like the place
aye.
was literally falling apart at the seams, and they were dropping asylum seekers in, and you're like, what
It's
quality
no
of
fair
life do
on-
you expect them to have?
Aye, it's
you know
not,
what I mean?
and it's funny because when you see migration depicted in the media, it's often pictures of Glasgow University and all that. 3,000 migrants come from Syria, and it shows you like Kelvin Grove Park.
Aye.
Do you know what I mean? And
That's not where they're staying.
no,
Definitely
and you'll
not.
find actually in those communities, attitudes to migration are less diverse, and people are more for it. But then there's also a correlation between the communities where migration is experienced, where migration spikes at certain points when resources are low, and that's what creates, I think, the friction. Also, a lot of people's views are driven by conditions of stress, resentment, and just taking a resentment because you're standing. I had done it a few weeks ago. I'm standing in a queue. It's very early in the morning. I know I've got a full day of work ahead of me. It's pissing the rain. This old woman at the front of the queue is just taking ages with her change. And in a wee brief moment, I was like, fucking old people. Do you know what I mean?
Aye.
No,
so
I know
true.
exactly what you mean.
Everybody's making a leap at some point. It's just your luck which leap is more socially acceptable, and whether you've developed the capacity to observe irrational thinking and nip it in the bud before it develops into a full value system.
Exactly,
I think
man.
this is one of the things that has changed in terms of how we talk about ourselves over the years. Is we've always had this conversation that's been very centred around the notions of class, and again that links quite closely to your previous works and stuff. But like, I think when we talk about the taxi driver, there's this divide and conquer we've spoke about a number of times, and I think part of that is that we're no longer working class, we're millennials, or we're LGBTQ, or we're whatever, any number of labels that we have for ourselves now. And I think in the past, people who conceptualised themselves as working class or middle class had that group that they could lean on and actually feel a community way. Whereas I think even within these various class structures, there is now so many smaller
Subsets.
segments that
Aye.
like getting people to actually agree what's in their best interests is almost impossible as a result. And this is where the taxi driver comes in, because as you say, he's not actually annoyed by the migrant that comes in and takes, quote unquote, takes his job. He's annoyed by the Uber CEO who decided, let's go in and undercut everybody in Glasgow. And what he doesn't realise is that division, the immigrant, is now being used and weaponised against
Take
them.
it even a step
what I mean?
further
Like,
and realise that it's the Saudi money that's going into the app, and they're the closest to the sort of war zones, and they take in no refugees. It's like it's a big, massive system that you're literally falling victim to.
Aye.
But you're reading or you're taking in media and pointing at individuals and going, they shouldn't be here. I've got a right to that job because I was born in this country, and it just.
Somebody somewhere's going, oh, you're part of this group. Well, that group, there's your enemy.
Exactly.
I would say, I mean, what is Uber? Uber is really the kind of vanguard of big data and automation and refining and cutting the number of human beings required to provide a multinational profitable service. Right? So as a capitalist idea, it's almost perfect.
Oh yeah.
It's almost perfect. But but the problem with globalization currently is that we've globalized these products and services created by multinational companies, but we've not performed risk assessments to what this is going to do to our societies and our populations, whether it be their work, whether it be their mental health, whether it be obesity, whether it be big data, access to social media, public discourse, whether it be the environment. Every single issue that is currently drawing all of the focus and attention of pretty much every government in Western countries is caused by giving a blank check to a big corporation, thinking that that is going to solve a problem in the short term, and not actually being able to perceive further along, seeing what the long term impact might be. And this is why, you know, while I don't necessarily think revolutionary action or destroying the system or tearing it all down, I'm not saying a lot of people are advocating that, but sometimes you get that sense, particularly on the further out left and right that you go, that people really want a kind of fundamental restart. But actually that would just make the people that we care about even more vulnerable, because in a political vacuum, the people who have the most are in a position to exploit that. So the issue for me is that globalization has been set, the parameters have been set to benefit companies based on a fallacy that if they're rich and the CEOs all pay 40-50% tax, that money will just get ploughed back into society. What they didn't account for was all the tax loopholes that would be exploited, the revolving doors between business and politics that would create a scenario where democracy is really about taking care of those interests first. The consensus is really where everybody who has stuff meets to say what they're not going to give up for the poor cunts, and then whatever's left over after that conversation's happened, then that's what everybody else gets. And so you need to think about, there's no avoiding globalisation, there's no avoiding the fact that humans will network, and every mechanism that they access will network until it's just like a big pulsing fucking organism. Do you know what I mean? It's about how do we utilise technology and understanding and science and all these things that we're so capable of in service of human needs and environmental needs first, and then say, beyond this, take your profit. Let's incentivise companies to treat their workers well. Let's say you get a tax break of the sort that you're enjoying now. If you've got a workforce where only 5% of people are coming off sick with depression, then you can take your fucking profit. You know, let's incentivise companies to innovate products that don't harm the environment, where it's not on the consumer to research and find out if there's an ethical nightmare going on when they make a purchase. Let's just say that the companies have got the resources and the understanding to already do that. I mean, if Cadbury's can understand how to create a piece of chocolate so that it sits on your tongue and dissolves within a certain time frame with a certain texture and smoothness that you'll immediately want to eat another bit, then what else could they possibly devise? I mean, all the sophistication that's poured into making us buy shit, it's all about human impulse, human needs, how we feel. It's very sophisticated, but it's all just about getting us to a till to buy a dairy milk.
This is the juxtaposition into it. I think when you look at Amazon, for example, I seen a thing recently, it was the John Oliver show, and he was talking about Amazon, and you talk about that progress on the surface. So big thing was that Bernie Sanders managed to negotiate or, you know, pressure from the Sanders campaign and, you know, the radical left in America, such as it is.
Air quotes.
Yeah, sorry for anybody listening. Had managed to, you know, force Amazon to pay their workers $15 an hour, and they were like, victory, you know, free at last, etc., etc. But like, what it doesn't take into account is that, and again, it encompasses automation and the AI and these massive warehouses, and like they've got people, because it's still dependent on people to work. So you press your button on Amazon Prime, your guy on the other end is getting his 15 quid an hour, which is great. But what they're not telling you is that he's a 75-year-old guy who's walked 16 miles in a warehouse today, and he's like timed to the absolute second of everything that he does. And you're like, that's the kind of where you're going. On the surface of things, it looks as though the $15 an hour wages progress, but on the other side of it, this big data and AI and automation is being weaponized against the physical well-being of the people there.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
And
Like-
because the system's not set up to identify and calculate metrics like what's fair on an old person,
Yeah.
then the system just doesn't flag it up. It's only looking at efficiency and profitability. So that's a very kind of Fordist approach, you know, in Henry Ford and the sort of the kind of golden age of the American expansion economically and globally. The whole thing that he developed was we can time right to the millisecond how long it takes for a person to assemble this part of a car.
Yep.
And then they move on to the next part of the production line. And so this is where that whole idea of efficiency really became very refined. And for a company that can be dead useful.
Yeah.
But we need to be as specific with these measurements and metrics when we're talking about human health or when we're talking about ethical issues that are thrown up. Now, I'm not saying that the current society we're in can't be modified in some way, because when you look at how far we've come, just on the broader kind of human civilizational scale, you know, 100 years ago, everybody that's alive now, their life would have been 100 times shitter, right? Harder, more difficult, right? In some ways simpler. Maybe no as like psychologically taxing, no such an overburden of stimulus that you're not able to process at an individual level. But at the same time, real hard work, not a lot of rights, generally just being shat on, literally sometimes, and not be able to really get about, you know what I mean, unless you're wealthy. So sometimes in that broader scale, you've got to say there has been a lot of advancements. This is a long-term project, this civilization stuff. And sometimes when we get to a cliff edge, whether it's how manky the Thames was before they designed the first underground train, or whether it was how bad the slums were before we had a radical house building programme and created a welfare state.
Yep.
Sometimes society comes to a cliff edge where even the powerful recognise, actually, we need to buck up our ideas a wee bit because the society that we're exploiting is about to fall apart. And sometimes that's when you get action. It's just a shame because there's a tremendous amount of collateral damage when the elites have to feel threatened before they'll actually do something.
So do you feel that's... I mean, I've said a number of times that I feel like societally we're on a tipping point. Like, so what you're describing there, do you think that's where we are? Do you think we're on the way there?
I think tipping points come along every couple of generations. And it's natural for humans that are alive at any time in history to feel a sense of foreboding about what's coming. And this also, I think, might explain why a lot of people who begin on the left end up on the right, which has been calculated around the age of 47, on average, is when people switch.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm only 35 and already I'm looking at some of the things that young people say and I'm like, fuck, man, you know what I mean? Like, you're a brass neck, do you know what I mean? You're doing my nutting, or you're dangerous, you know what I mean? Even people on the same side as me. So imagine what it must be like to go 60, 70, 80. I mean, old people are a relatively new thing in society.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The average life expectancy was 40 in like the 15, 16, 1700s. And then with the Industrial Revolution, as the population expanded, the average life expectancy within 10 generations was 70. So the whole society is having to recalibrate to accommodate the fact that people live longer, social care crisis, so on and so forth. But also the big strain is in the political discourse, because naturally, if you grow up in a society that becomes unrecognisable the older you get, you're going to develop conservative impulses. You're going to develop a sense, I need somebody who reminds me of the way things were when I was young. You know, bring back hanging. Do you know what I mean? And so there's this thing I don't think that's been really accounted for, which is there's a stretching of the diversity of political views, and also people at that end of the spectrum are far more politically enfranchised and economically enfranchised, often for a lifetime of working. And so despite the fact that they're the ones that don't have to live in the society that's coming, they're the ones that are steering it. They're the ones that are calling the shots, because they think, here, we've been alive this whole time, so you wee bastards are not going to tell us what the fuck is happening. And you know, that's why you've got politicians having to frame policy that's palatable to these conservative views, whether it's criminal justice. I mean, I can't imagine a demographic less knowledgeable about the current challenges of criminal justice in the judicial system than people, retired rural conservatives, who are less likely to be criminals, less likely to be victims of crime, but they're calling the shots. They're saying, no, get all this fucking, get all your pish to fuck all this soft justice, do you know what I mean? I want my criminals fucking dead. You know what I mean?
I mean, you look at things like Gabor Mate, for instance, coming and saying things like the criminal justice system or the prison system is possibly the biggest asylum that's ever existed, that we don't commit people for like help anymore. We just judge them and throw them in a cell and just be like, you're part of like society's sort of dregs and we don't want to deal with you, so you can just get locked up and see you later. And pretty much every one of them, a man or a woman, is mentally ill in some way. Do you know what I mean? And this is like, I think
and suffered abuse often earlier in their life. It doesn't absolve them of harming other people, obviously,
Of course not.
but certainly, like we were talking about viewpoints earlier, that you need to understand the roots of criminality often lie in lack of access to opportunity, lack of education, and often some form of trauma at play early in life, where a person's entire perception of the world is framed by insecurity. So they behave in a way to ward off threats, and sometimes this brings them into criminality, you know.
Well, that's it.
And in America as well, the big lesson for us, and I think we kind of learned this, where we tried to privatise probation.
Yeah.
Right? And it's been a nightmare and it's cost millions and it doesn't work. So we've said, actually, we're not going to privatise probation anymore. In America, almost everything's private.
Yeah.
Right? So when you insert a profit motive into human health or well-being, immediately there's an ethical conflict.
Yeah.
Because the investments that you need to make in order to create the potential opportunities to reform people, sometimes you're going to make losses on that. 1 year, 2 people might reform. The next year, 200 people might reform. You can't withdraw the money the year 2 people do well because it looks inefficient. You know, this is what we do in society often. You know, only 10 people got into that library this year. Tell you what, see, instead of investing in the library and putting as much thought into the library as Starbucks put into a coffee house, let's just close it, because obviously people aren't using it, and so it's inefficient.
Yeah.
And that's a problem when capitalism gets its tentacles into everything, because not everything can be run on a supply and demand basis.
Definitely.
I've came to the conclusion that, especially under the Trump era, using GDP or the health of the market as a barometer for how well the country's doing is absolutely fucking insane, because the market serves the people at the top ultimately, and going like, look how well we've done.
Yeah.
And the Tories do it as well. They talk about like unemployment figures. Unemployment figures are it, right? But how do we feel? I think that there's this missing like human element to politics and society as in general that I think people are craving. Like, we need to start, there needs to be some sort of politician that comes out and starts talking about how do we feel. I remember somebody saying to me, there's no room for compassion in economics.
Yeah.
And I was like, why the fuck no?
Economics is whatever we channel into it.
Exactly.
I mean, economics is a human
We made
construct.
it. So
Aye.
it's not like something that rules us. Like, we should be ultimately dominating it and determining what happens. I think in a world where, well, I mean, I watch a lot of American podcasts, and they were talking about like the British NHS as if it was like some sort of Victorian, like we were amputating people with fucking hacksaws and barbers. That's the way that they were speaking about it and how great their healthcare system is. Like, it's not that fucking great, man. Like, there's people travelling from Texas to Canada to get cancer treatment that's affordable. Like, how can you not see that there's got to be something in the middle that where if you can afford it, you can get lavish healthcare if you want it, but
300,000 deaths a year in America as a result of no insurance, you know what I mean? Like, so the system itself
but that's
just
so
seriously
my
flawed.
point is that the profit motive ultimately ends up driving services down so that it can be painted to people as inefficient.
And that's even when everybody's acting with integrity or within the rules. Then you've got the opioid crisis, which is partly triggered by people creating drugs they know they're addictive and paying doctors to prescribe them.
See, that's
and you've got as many
up.
people dying. The opioid crisis is just like a fucking genocide almost, in terms of the scale in the States. And it's, as most trends in America, it's making its way here and presenting in different ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and these, as I said earlier, are this is the blowback of a market that is driven by the needs of corporations based on the fallacy that if they're doing well, we'll all do well. I'm not saying people who were pioneering neoliberalism didn't genuinely believe this is a good way to set up a society.
Yeah.
Everybody's free, companies are people, and if companies we just set their ingenuity loose, they're a lot more intuitive and responsive than the state. They can just adapt based on needs, then everything will be fine. But I think the last 15 years has really been a hard lesson for everybody, and I think the EU's began to learn that. I mean, that's them started fining Google. That's them started, clamping down on everything from food labelling and challenging food lobbies to honestly label their products. They're getting I think France brought in a law about digital services tax, which obviously Trump is going to play hard.
I said that's going to cripple Google. 3% tax on services is going to cripple Google. I mean, like you're talking about Amazon. Jeff Bezos is the richest guy in the fucking planet. Taking 3% off of his company is going to do fuck all. It absolutely not even going to touch the sides.
It might mean something, their share price goes down, or it might mean they're not the number one company in the world. But is that the worst thing ever? And those things, those ideas, I think, particularly in Europe, because, and this is why I voted Remain, even though I understand why people are displeased with the system, is that I believe the big force shaping lifestyles, politics and social problems is that sort of unfettered corporatocracy that's just been let loose on the planet, that's more powerful than most countries.
Yeah.
And the only way that we can modulate that force is to collectivise as nation states and say, here's our big marketplace. You want access to this, you play by our rules. If you want to go to court for 10 years, Google, we can do that because we're the EU and we're bigger than China and we're bigger than America when you're talking about selling products. And ultimately, I don't see a scenario where Britain outside the EU is going to be able to stand up to those forces. If anything, we're going to be like, please Google,
because we're in competition with them.
Please Amazon, come and build a factory for pensioners to work in, so that the politicians can go onto Twitter with all the grace of potty training toddlers and lie about the employment figures. Like that.
Somebody in 1 hour work a week is employed.
It's nonsensical. But again, and this is the conflict, I think, where you've got centrist politics. I think some people in the centre understand these forces need to be wielded in some way. That pressure needs to be exerted. But their belief is that you only do that by creating a consensus within the population for that sort of action. And that's a slow, drawn-out process. Obviously, some people in the centre are met of the right and they believe that corporations are really good and it's our fault for not choosing the right products, and companies will change when we don't buy dairy milks.
The market will dictate. Don't worry, leave it to the market. It's like, it's crazy.
But then you've got people in the left that are just like, fucking tear it all fucking down.
There's this strange thing that I've seen happening for a while, because I get right into it and took a step back, but the conspiracy theory community is really starting to come to prominence. I mean, you've got Tommy Robinson with a t-shirt saying that he's been convicted for being a journalist.
Oh my God.
And then he's going on InfoWars and he's talking about how he may be murdered for being a journalist in the UK and he's wanting political asylum. The Trump QAnon stuff is really interesting, but it feels to me like that whole sort of community are like people that think that there are dark forces at work behind the scenes, that everybody that sort of contributes to the market or society, one world government, new world order, they're attacking our culture.
They're all Jewish.
This is what it's getting to, and it's really fucking scary that we've seen. I mean, even a couple of days ago, they're attacking people on the street. There was like an anti-Brexit outside Westminster, and Tommy Robinson supporters ran along and attacked the BBC. So we're starting to see this start coming into the mainstream, and I find it particularly strange and scary because I dipped my toe and seen some of the stuff that they're actually saying not in the mainstream, like behind the scenes on like their 4 and 8 chans, and it's scary stuff, man. It's like they think that Trump's some sort of patriot, the blue collar billionaire that's out there to out the worldwide sex ring that exists, that the Clintons are trafficking children.
The guy that walks into lassies' dressing rooms and all that.
But I think that's people who like are taking what Dan's talking about there, this globalist movement, this globalisation of everything, and misinterpreting it and seeing shadows and conspiracies and whatever that, almost certainly en masse aren't they there.
I don't feel there's a conspiracy because pretty much everything is out in the open. if you want to do enough reading, you want
Yeah.
to do enough research. I mean, like the Illuminati conspiracy theory stuff, which I later realised was a bit more anti-Semitic than anything. But everybody goes through a kind of rite of passage as young people smoking a lot of blow. It's like, oh, I know what's actually going on and fucking all that sort of stuff. But then all the information is out there. The EU publish every fucking conversation they're having, every bit of legislation, every single thing that comprises our reality and our society, politically and economically, is usually something you can go and read or find out, or you can go and research. So I think that the conspiracy theory stuff almost functions as a metaphor. The reality is far more interesting and far more complex, I believe anyway. And it's not that I believe, it just is. Now, is there power imbalances? Absolutely. Are there people acting with malign intentions? Absolutely. Do we have to be aware of networks where power and wealth is concentrated? Absolutely. Because these are things that arise out of human behaviour, whatever side of the social scale you're at. You know, like, how can I know that this will sound a bit kind of like stupid for me to say. As soon as I got an opportunity to write a book, first thought was my sister. She's probably a better writer than me. If she gets an opportunity, one day I'll help her get her foot in the door. Right? It's all right for me to do that because I'm down there. But my instinct's not that different for somebody else going like that. Do you know what I mean? Like some billionaire going like that. Son, I'm going to put you in charge of the farm. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, there's a human instinct to sort of sort out the people that are around you.
Yeah.
To the detriment of other people who might be more deserving, who might have more merit. You know what I mean? And you know, I'm not saying there's an equivalence between these two things. Obviously, where there's a lot of power and wealth, we need to get in there to say, nah, that's not really going to work for us because money's like a magnet and it just goes to itself. But the impulses that drive a lot of the behaviour are the same. They're the same. It's, I want to look after people that I know. I relate to people who exist in my experience. I identify with people who have this certain kind of lifestyle because we all get it, what it's like to be us. And it just depends on how much money and power a community has. How many consequences come for the rest of society.
And I think that's you've probably just touched on it right at the end there, is the notion of community. So we were watching the Flat Earth thing on Netflix a couple of weeks ago. And obviously what came out of that was community. But I'm aware that we're obviously getting to, you know, quite tight for time here. So I want to just kind of like start the wrap-up process with the show. You've been on the scene in Glasgow for years. You've been a rapper, you're a writer, now you're, what, is it safe to say a playwright, you know, a social commentator? So you've got a lot of strings to your bow here. Obviously, what we've been talking about has been really interesting. Where do these all meet in the middle? Because I'm interested in, you know, is there a common thought process? Is it, you know, are you evolving and changing with each individual, you know, element that comes in?
I would hope so. I mean, that's definitely my aim. Last year, my show, I think, was informed by obviously the book was a primary influence. A lot of people who had read the book and came to the show would have seen all the references to the book. And actually, you know, what some people didn't realise was the two big things in my mind when creating that show were, I want to show people what an influence comedy has had on me.
Okay.
So this was something a lot of people didn't understand about me because they didn't really have a chance to showcase it, right? But I really was influenced by comedians in my early work as I have been by rappers or writers or public speakers. So I wanted to kind of not sell the show as comedy because there's too much pressure then on it to be funny, but actually smuggle comedy into it under the kind of auspices of what people think they're coming to see, which is a rant about poverty. So that's one aspect of it. And then the other thing really was to try and put Scottish rap in a context where people can enjoy it and absorb it without that initial prejudice of going, this is Scottish rap. So the best way to do that is take it out of the scheme, take it out of the gritty context, put it in a theatre, and suddenly people feel it's incumbent on them to appreciate it, or they're stupid because it's in a theatre, and they're like, well, this is a theatre, so what's going on here must be sophisticated because I'm sophisticated. And so suddenly you're shoveling Scottish rap down everybody's throat, and they're actually all buzzing about it, and they're all queuing up to get books signed after it, and they don't even know they've been watching Scottish rap.
Yeah.
They don't even, it doesn't click, right? Now, if I put out the same content that I put in my show with the instrumentals and the hip hop beats and the gritty videos and all that, those same people, a lot of them would be like, I can't watch this, man.
Yeah.
This is too angry. But see, when you frame it as spoken word, or see when you say it's theatre,
Right.
or whatever, then the whole audience attitude towards it changes. And so with the last show, Poverty Safari Live, that was a success in terms of my objectives, and I think I sold out 8 shows and the rest of them were 3/4 full, and that was my first time at the Fringe. So that was really cool. This year, obviously, I've tried to write a different type of show, blending the same elements.
Yeah.
Last year, I would say probably Stuart Lee was the main comedic influence on it. I did a lot of kind of meta-tech.
Love Stuart Lee.
I did a lot of kind of meta-textual shit and sort of like winding the audience up and sort of talking about how clever my stuff was and all that.
Yeah.
Right? And had a lot of fun with it.
He's an absolute master at that.
Aye.
So he is that.
But I think this year I'm going for maybe a kind of George Carlin vibe.
Okay.
So it's a bit more tightly written. There's less deviations. There's less of the meta stuff. It's more kind of, here is my very carefully worded rant. Here is my very carefully worded observation. Here's a carefully worded joke.
Yeah.
Less play, less taking the ball for a walk. More like, you know, I've noticed as I'm looking at the drafts that it's a lot denser. So there's less music in it. There's less rap in it. So that hits harder.
Okay.
I think last time I didn't have as much time to write as I would have liked to, so I think I substituted songs in when I thought, actually, this song will do the legwork for me. This time, maybe 2 or 3 songs, maybe 4, and the rest is, you know, at least on the draft, it's big chunky paragraphs, really meaty stuff, do you know what I mean? Some of the stuff we've went into a wee bit today.
Yep.
And I think that the show's a reflection of where my head's at in preparation for this next book. So the content does kind of port quite well to different mediums, and obviously when you're dealing with big ideas or you're working towards a show which takes up a lot of time and energy, the same as a book, you really have to kind of pick a ballpark where you're drawing all your content from a similar source.
Yeah.
You're thinking about a similar issue, because the analysis gets deeper, and also you've got a finite amount of time and space in your mind and in your life to be talking about poverty and social mobility in one thing and then talking about something else in another thing.
Yeah.
So I really take a year out and explore. I'm exploring one area and all my stuff is about that.
Yeah.
Whether it's the music or the show or the book, and then it's on to the next thing, whatever it
I
might
think
be.
when I think about the, you know, on the surface, notions of rap and comedy don't instantly, like, you know, vibe with me. But at the same time, see when you talk about like a George Carlin, and I'm thinking to myself, do you know what? What about a Public Enemy? There is a political discourse in both. There is often quite a confrontational approach in both. Like, and I think, like, you know, that's something I'm definitely looking forward to seeing when the show comes round, is that, you know, mixture of, you know, the rap and the you know, the almost ranty comedy, because I think, you know, although it wouldn't be something that I immediately put together, when you explain it in the terms that you just have, it is something that is extremely appealing to me.
It's funny that I describe it as a rant. That's how middle class people describe working class people when they speak at length about something.
Yeah.
When a middle class person speaks at length about something, they'll call it verbose. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Or they'll call it articulate, you know, or lengthy. But when it's somebody like me that does it, it's a rant.
Yeah.
You know? So sometimes I just adopt those terms because I'm so fed up saying, actually, I think that you calling this a rant maybe minimises how much work I put into it.
Patronising.
You're just like, do you know what? Fuck it, it is brutal, it is fucking harrowing, it is a fucking rant. Get in line, do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And strap yourself in, you cunts.
Well, cheers for coming on,
I
man.
will be strapped in.
Proper, like, love this conversation, and it's been a pleasure to meet you. But thanks very much, and we're going to come through to Edinburgh and see the show, and I'll link it up to all the sort of stuff that we put out there. But good
Brilliant.
luck with it, man.
No, thanks for your support,
very
man.
Really
It's been good
appreciate
to
the
chat.
time, and
Cheers.
thanks for coming in.
I made a promise to whom will not to you, so stop the party. I tried to reconcile my own. We'll end up burning bridges, sat upon a selfish throne. I will march along this path of ambitious, forceful ties. I'll be dead before it crashes down before my eyes. I know we'll make it through smiles and trials of fire. We'll make the party. I see right through it, the great desert to fade. You call the party. Feeding lies like you'll never know. I don't need to be unhappy with a life to call my own. We'll end up burning bridges, sat upon a selfish throne. I will march along this path of ambitious, forceful ties. I'll be dead before it crashes down before my eyes.